Imagine landing at the busiest airport in America, just trying to make your connection home. For Colonel Marcus Reed, a decorated Army officer, that ordinary walk through the terminal turned into a nightmare when two racist cops singled him out, cuffed him in front of a crowd, and had no idea who he really was. Phones were rolling, the truth was about to explode, and the fallout shook the nation. Before we dive into this story, sit back, hit like, and subscribe so you won't miss tomorrow's powerful stories. The late summer sun was dipping low as the Delta flight touched down smoothly at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, right on runway 9L. Colonel Marcus Reed exhaled quietly, a small release of tension after a long day. At 47, he was fit and carried himself with the steady confidence of someone who'd spent decades in the U.S. Army. His short-cropped black hair showed a few streaks of gray, and his sharp brown eyes missed nothing, a habit from years of leading high-stakes missions. Today, he wore a simple navy blazer, a white shirt with an open collar, and khakis. No uniform, no medals, just a low profile for this quick trip. He'd been called to a classified briefing in D.C. about troop deployments, and now, after a 2-hour flight, all he wanted was to catch his connecting flight home to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, just 400 miles away. Marcus grabbed his carry-on, a black duffel bag with his laptop and a few essentials, and slung it over his shoulder. He stepped off the plane at Gate A-17, blending into the stream of passengers. Atlanta's airport was buzzing, even at 6 p.m. The hum of voices, the clatter of rolling suitcases, and the occasional overhead announcement filled the air. Families rushed to gates, business travelers checked their phones, and kids darted around. Marcus moved with purpose, keeping his distance from the crowd, his eyes scanning the terminal out of instinct. After 25 years in the military, staying alert was second nature, especially in busy places like this. He was a colonel in the Army Special Operations Command, a role that kept him in the shadows, overseeing sensitive operations. No entourage followed him. Marcus preferred it that way for unofficial trips like this. He headed toward the escalators to the connecting gates, already thinking about the quiet evening ahead. His wife, Lena, was waiting back home, probably cooking her famous chili. For a moment he smiled, picturing it, unaware that trouble was just a few steps away, brewing in the crowded terminal. Near Gate A-17, 2 Atlanta airport police officers stood watching the evening crowd. Officer Tom Bradley, a stocky guy in his late 40s with a permanent frown, leaned against a wall, sipping coffee. His partner, Officer Jake Carter, was younger, maybe 30, with a nervous energy, always glancing around like he was waiting for something to happen. Bradley had been on the job forever, and it showed in his tired eyes. He'd seen it all, or so he thought, and had a habit of sizing people up too quick. Carter, still green, usually followed Bradley's lead, even when it felt off. Their radio crackled softly, and Bradley checked his phone. A message from airport security popped up. A vague report about a suspicious person near Gate A-17. It said male, black, dark jacket, acting strange, alone. That was it. No details, no clear reason. Bradley raised an eyebrow, scanning the crowd. His eyes landed on Colonel Marcus Reed, walking steadily with his duffel bag, the only black man nearby who sorta matched the description. A smirk tugged at Bradley's lips. "There's our guy Jake," he said, nodding toward Marcus. "Let's check him out." Carter hesitated. Marcus didn't look suspicious. Just a guy heading somewhere, maybe a businessman. But Bradley was already moving, so Carter followed, trying to look confident. They weaved through the crowd, closing the gap. Bradley's stride was heavy like he owned the place. Carter's heart picked up a bit, unsure but caught in the moment. "Sir, hold up!" Bradley called out, his voice loud enough to turn heads. Marcus slowed, turning slightly, his face calm but curious, unaware that a routine walk was about to spiral into something else entirely. Colonel Marcus Reed stopped in his tracks, turning to face the two officers. His expression stayed calm, but his sharp eyes sized them up quick. Officer Bradley stood too close, his hands on his hips, trying to look tough. Carter hung back a step, less sure but still on edge. "What's the problem, officers?" Marcus asked, his voice steady, like he was addressing soldiers, not cops. He'd been through enough in his career to know this wasn't random, but he kept his cool, standing tall at 6 feet, his duffel bag still over one shoulder. Bradley didn't miss a beat. "We got a report about someone suspicious around here, and you fit the bill," he said, his tone flat like it was a done deal. "Need to see your ID." Marcus raised an eyebrow, not moving to grab his wallet just yet. "Suspicious how?" he asked, keeping his voice even. "What exactly am I supposed to have done?" He knew his rights. 25 years in the Army taught him to question vague accusations, especially ones that felt off. Bradley's face tightened. He wasn't used to being questioned, especially not by someone who looked like Marcus. "Look, buddy, this is an airport. We check whoever we want. Just show your ID or we got a problem." His words had a bite, and Marcus caught the way Bradley's eyes flicked over him, judging his dark skin, his blazer, like they didn't add up. Carter shifted his weight, glancing at Bradley, then back at Marcus. "Yeah, let's make this quick," Carter added, trying to sound firm but coming off nervous. Marcus took a slow breath, keeping his temper in check. He'd faced worse, battlefields, interrogations, but this stung different. "Officers, I'm happy to cooperate, but you need a real reason to stop me. That's the law. What's in this report you're talking about?" His tone stayed polite, but there was steel behind it, the kind that came from leading men through chaos without blinking. Bradley's smirk faded, replaced by a scowl. "Don't get smart with me," he snapped, stepping closer, his finger jabbing the air. "You're in Atlanta, not some fancy office. What's with the bag? Why are you walking around like you own the place?" The questions weren't about security. They were personal, laced with something ugly. Marcus felt the heat rising in his chest, but he kept it locked down. He'd seen prejudice before, in small towns, even on bases early in his career. He knew better than to let it pull him off center. "I'm traveling for work," Marcus said, his voice still level. "My bag's got my laptop, some clothes. That's it. I'm asking again, what's the issue here?" He glanced at Carter, who looked uneasy, like he knew this was going south but didn't know how to stop it. A few passengers slowed down, watching, their phones creeping out to record. Bradley leaned in, his voice dropping low. Mean. "Work, huh? What kind, sneaking around airports? People like you always got an excuse." The "people like you" hit like a slap, and Marcus's jaw tightened. He wasn't just a soldier now, he was a black man in their eyes, nothing more. "Officer, that's out of line," Marcus said, his words sharp but controlled. "You're crossing into discrimination. I suggest you back off and explain yourself properly." That set Bradley off. His face reddened, and he barked, "You don't tell me how to do my job! I've had enough of your attitude." He turned to Carter, eyes blazing. "He's dodging us, Jake. Probably hiding something." Carter nodded, caught up in Bradley's fire, though his hands shook a little. Marcus stood his ground, knowing this was about to get worse, his instincts screaming to stay calm even as the crowd's whispers grew louder around them. Bradley's voice turned sharp, like a blade. "You're resisting us now," he shouted, loud enough for the whole terminal to hear. "Carter, grab him!" Marcus Reed's eyes narrowed, but he didn't move, his hands still at his sides. "I'm not resisting," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm brewing. "Don't touch me without cause." But Bradley was done talking. He lunged forward, reaching for Marcus's arm. Carter hesitated for a split second, then followed, his face tight with nerves. Marcus stepped back, trying to keep space, but the officers closed in fast. It happened in a blur. Bradley grabbed Marcus's blazer, yanking hard. Marcus twisted away, pure instinct from years of training, but he didn't swing, just blocked Carter's clumsy grab. "Back off!" Marcus barked, loud and clear, hoping to snap them out of it. The crowd gasped, phones up, recording every second. But to Bradley, that move was defiance. "He's fighting us!" he yelled, and together they rushed Marcus like he was a threat. At 47, Marcus was strong, but two younger guys piling on was too much. His duffel bag hit the floor, zipper splitting, spilling his laptop and a folded army cap. They wrestled him down, Marcus's knee slamming into the cold tile. Pain shot through his leg, but the humiliation burned worse. Carter fumbled with his cuffs, snapping them tight around Marcus's wrists, too tight, pinching his skin. The metal clicked shut, and the crowd's murmurs grew louder, some shocked, others whispering. Bradley stood over Marcus, panting, a smug grin creeping onto his face. "Told you to cooperate," he sneered, picking up Marcus's wallet from the spilled bag. He flipped it open, glancing at the North Carolina driver's license. "Marcus Reed, huh? Tough guy's going to the station." Marcus stayed silent, his chest heaving, eyes locked on the floor. His blazer was torn at the shoulder, his pride bruised worse than his body. He'd led soldiers through war zones, earned respect worldwide. But here, in Atlanta's busy airport, he was just another black man to them, cuffed, helpless, and shamed in public. Bradley dusted off his hands, thinking he'd won, unaware of the storm about to break. Marcus's jaw clenched, his mind already turning to what came next. Marcus Reed sat on the cold airport floor, wrists aching from the tight cuffs, his torn blazer bunched around his shoulders. Officer Bradley towered over him, still smirking, waving Marcus's wallet like a trophy. "Got anything to say now, tough guy?" he taunted, his voice dripping with scorn. Carter stood nearby, shifting nervously, his eyes darting between Marcus and the growing crowd filming with their phones. Marcus took a slow breath, lifting his head. His face was calm, but his brown eyes burned with a quiet fire. He'd faced worse than this in war zones, and he wasn't about to break now. "You asked who I am," he said, his voice low and steady, cutting through the terminal's noise. "I'm Marcus Reed." Bradley snorted, tossing the wallet onto Marcus's spilled duffel bag. "Yeah, we know that. So what?" He leaned closer, trying to rattle him. Marcus didn't flinch. He sat up straighter, the cuffs digging into his skin, and spoke again, each word clear and deliberate. "Colonel Marcus Reed, United States Army Special Operations Command." A heavy pause hung in the air. "I lead some of the most elite units in this country's military." The smirk on Bradley's face froze, then cracked. His eyes widened, and his mouth opened, but no words came out. Carter's face drained of color, his hands trembling as he clutched the cuff keys. "What?" Bradley stammered, his voice breaking. You're saying you're a colonel?" Marcus's gaze didn't waver, pinning Bradley like a laser. "That's right. And you just cuffed me for no reason in front of all these people." Panic hit the officers like a freight train. Bradley stumbled back, sweat beading on his forehead. No, this is a mistake," he muttered, his bravado gone. He turned to Carter, his voice frantic. "Get those cuffs off him now!" Carter dropped to his knees, fumbling with the keys so bad he nearly dropped them. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm so sorry," he mumbled, his hands shaking as he unlocked the cuffs. They fell away, leaving red marks on Marcus's wrists. Bradley started babbling, his words tripping over each other. "Colonel, we didn't know, I swear. The report, it was vague. We were just doing our job. Please, don't." Marcus stood slowly, rubbing his wrists, his face unreadable. He didn't shout or threaten, just let their fear fill the silence. The crowd murmured, some whispering, "Colonel," as phones kept recording. Bradley's eyes begged for mercy, but Marcus's steady stare said this wasn't over. He picked up his duffel, brushing off his torn blazer, and waited, knowing the real consequences were just beginning to unfold. The crowd parted as Captain Sarah Jennings, the officer in charge of airport security, strode toward the chaos at Gate A-17. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, with a no-nonsense vibe that made people stand straighter. Her radio had buzzed with reports of a disturbance, and now she saw it. Colonel Marcus Reed, wrists red, blazer torn, standing calm but commanding. Officers Bradley and Tom were a mess, pale, sweating, stammering excuses. She didn't know Marcus's rank yet, but his presence screamed authority. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice firm, arms crossed. Bradley tried to speak, but his words jumbled. "It was a mistake, Captain, just a report." Jennings cut him off. "Stand up straight and explain, now." She turned to Marcus, softening her tone. "Sir, I'm Captain Jennings. Can you tell me what happened?" Marcus met her gaze, steady as ever. "Ansam. I'm Colonel Marcus Reed, Army Special Operations. Your officer stopped me based on a vague report, threw around insults, and cuffed me when I asked for a reason. They used force I didn't deserve." Jennings's jaw tightened as Marcus's words sank in. A colonel? Her eyes flicked to Bradley and Carter, who looked like they wanted to disappear. She knew this was bad, real bad. "Colonel Reed, I'm sorry this happened," she said, sincere but professional. "We'll get to the bottom of it." Then she turned to the officers, her voice like steel. "Bradley, Carter, hand over your badges and radios. You're off duty until we sort this out. These guys," she nodded to two other officers stepping up, "will take you to the office." As Bradley and Carter shuffled away, heads down, Jennings faced Marcus again. "Colonel, I need your statement, and I'll make sure every second of their body cam footage is saved, untouched. You have my word." Marcus nodded, his face still calm but serious. "Thank you, Captain. I expect a full report." He adjusted his duffel, ready to move on, but the weight of what happened lingered. Word of the incident at Atlanta's airport spread like wildfire. By morning it was on every news channel, X posts, and even the Pentagon's radar. Colonel Marcus Reed, a decorated Army Special Operations leader, had been wrongly cuffed by 2 airport cops, and the story wasn't going away. The Atlanta Police Department launched an internal investigation right away, working with the Department of Justice and Army officials to dig into what happened. They pulled the body cam footage from Officers Bradley and Carter, and it told the whole ugly story. Vague suspicions, harsh words, racial bias clear as day, and a violent takedown that didn't need to happen. The videos went viral, racking up millions of views online, with people demanding answers. Investigators didn't stop at the footage. They dug into Bradley's record and found a trail of complaints, 6 in 10 years, all about heavy-handed tactics or unfair treatment, mostly toward Black and Hispanic travelers. Most had been brushed off with warnings or retraining. Carter's file was cleaner, but he had a habit of going along with whoever was in charge, no questions asked. The deeper they looked, the more questions came up about the airport's security culture. Had supervisors ignored warning signs? Was bias swept under the rug? Marcus's case wasn't just about 2 bad cops. It was shining a light on a bigger mess. The Department of Justice took it to the next level, filing federal charges against Bradley and Carter for violating civil rights under color of law, a serious crime that could mean prison time. Georgia prosecutors added state charges, assault and unlawful detention, based on the footage and witness statements. The case was set for trial in Atlanta's federal courthouse, and the whole country was watching. People posted hashtags like #JusticeForReed, while others debated police reform on X. Marcus, back at Fort Bragg, stayed quiet, letting the process play out, but he gave a detailed statement to investigators, sticking to the facts with the same calm he'd shown that day. When the trial started, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, activists, even some Army brass in the back. Prosecutors laid out the case like a roadmap. Bradley and Carter had no real evidence, just a flimsy report and their own snap judgments about Marcus's race. The body cam videos played on a big screen, showing every sneer, every shove, and Marcus's steady voice calling out their bias. Jurors shifted in their seats, some shaking their heads as Bradley's "people like you" line echoed through the room. Witnesses from the airport backed Marcus up, saying he never raised a fist, just stood his ground. The defense tried to spin it. Bradley's lawyer called it a stressful mistake, saying long shifts and a busy airport clouded their judgment. Carter's attorney begged for leniency, painting him as a rookie caught in the moment. But the evidence was a brick wall. Marcus's rank as a colonel added weight, but it was his dignity on those videos, never losing his cool despite the cuffs, that hit hardest. The trial wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every person who'd been judged for their skin instead of their actions. As closing arguments wrapped up, the room felt heavy. Everyone knowing the verdict could send a message far beyond Atlanta's city limits. The federal courtroom in Atlanta was dead quiet as the trial of officers Bradley and Carter reached its peak. Reporters filled the back rows, scribbling notes, while families and activists sat shoulder to shoulder, eyes glued to the front. Colonel Marcus Reed took the stand, his Navy suit crisp, his posture straight as ever. At 47, he carried the weight of his Army career in every step, but his face stayed calm, no hint of anger. When he spoke, his voice was clear, laying out the airport incident like a mission report. The vague report, the insults, the cuffs biting into his wrists. He didn't exaggerate or lash out, just told the truth, and that hit harder than any outburst could. Jurors leaned forward, hanging on his words, seeing a man who'd served his country for decades treated like a criminal for no reason. The prosecution played the body cam footage again, every second damning. Bradley's sneers, Carter's shaky hands, the crowd's gasps as Marcus hit the floor. The room felt heavier with each clip. Prosecutors argued the officers betrayed their badges, letting bias drive them to break the law. The defense scrambled, claiming it was a mix-up, not racism, and begged for mercy, saying both men were sorry now. But the videos didn't lie, and Marcus's testimony sealed it. He wasn't just a victim. He was a leader who'd faced worse than them and still stood tall. After 3 days of back and forth, the jury went to deliberate. Hours dragged on, tension thick in the air. Finally, they filed back in, faces unreadable. The foreman stood, voice steady. On the charge of violating civil rights under color of law, we find the defendants, Thomas Bradley and Jake Carter, guilty. Gasps rippled through the crowd. On the charge of assault, guilty. On unlawful detention, guilty. Bradley's head dropped, his hands gripping the table. Carter stared at the floor, eyes red, like the world had caved in. Weeks later, at sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. She called their actions a stain on law enforcement, a betrayal of trust that hurt everyone, not just Marcus. You judged a man by his skin, not his character, she said, her voice firm. That's not a mistake, it's a choice. She sentenced both to 5 years in federal prison, a hammer drop that echoed beyond the room. Marcus sat in the gallery, watching silently, his face showing no triumph, just quiet resolve. As Bradley and Carter were led away in cuffs, the same kind they'd used on him, the courtroom buzzed with whispers of justice. Hard-won, but real. Colonel Marcus Reed stood by the window of his office at Fort Bragg, the North Carolina sun sinking low, casting long shadows across his desk. Months had passed since the Atlanta airport incident, but it still sat heavy in his mind. The trial was over. Bradley and Carter were behind bars, their 5-year sentences a clear signal that justice had spoken. Marcus felt no joy in it, though. He'd won, sure, but the victory tasted bitter. As he watched cars zip along the highway below, he kept thinking about one thing. He was a colonel, a leader in the U.S. Army, and that's why his story got heard. His rank opened doors, got cameras rolling, and forced accountability. But what about folks without a title? Regular people, black, brown, or anyone, facing the same bias every day, with no one to listen? He turned from the window, his eyes landing on a photo of him and his wife, Lena, smiling at a base picnic. She'd been his rock through it all, reminding him to keep pushing forward. The incident wasn't just personal, it was a wake-up call. Marcus knew the Army, like any system, wasn't perfect. He'd seen bias in his early days as a young officer, subtle looks or doubts about his place. Now, leading special operations, he had power to change things, to make fairness more than a buzzword. He thought of the soldiers under him, young men and women looking to him for guidance. They deserved a system that judged them for their grit, not their skin. Sitting at his desk, Marcus opened a file on new training protocols he was pushing, ones that hammered home respect, accountability, and zero tolerance for prejudice. The airport mess showed him how deep the problem ran, not just in police stations but everywhere. He couldn't fix it all, but he could start where he stood. Justice for him wasn't enough. It had to reach everyone, no matter who they were. Marcus picked up his pen, ready to keep fighting that bigger battle, knowing every step counted toward a world where no one got cuffed for just being themselves. Colonel Marcus Reed closed the file, his mind still wrestling with the bigger fight ahead. The Atlanta incident wasn't just a bad day. It was a mirror showing how quick people can judge based on looks, not truth. It taught him, and he hoped others, that respect isn't optional. It's owed to everyone, no matter their color or status. Bias, he realized, thrives in snap decisions, but fairness grows when we pause and listen. Every person's story matters, and justice shouldn't depend on a title or a badge. Marcus knew change starts small. Calling out wrong when you see it, treating folks with dignity, and owning up to mistakes. Those choices build a world where no one's cuffed for being themselves. He leaned back, picturing the soldiers he led, the families like his own, and the kids watching the world to learn what's right. Stories like his could spark that change, one heart at a time. Keep telling them, he thought, vowing to share more. If this moved you, hit that subscribe button and join our channel. Don't miss the next story. We've got plenty more to share about respect, justice, and the lessons that shape us all.